My name is Audrey, I am 28 years old and I'm currently pregnant with my first child with my wonderful husband Nathan. This journey has brought us emotions beyond anything words can describe. From the moment we saw the 2 red lines on the test, my heart felt like it was going to burst with happiness. Nathan hugged me tightly, his eyes brighter than ever, and right then we knew our lives were about to start a completely new chapter. We've been together for 6 years and married for 3. Our love isn't just about passion or routine. It's about sharing and standing by each other through every up and down. Having a child wasn't something that happened instantly. We had been trying for a full year. Each cycle of hope and disappointment felt like a punch to the heart. But somehow, by some miracle, our dream finally came true. During the first days of my pregnancy, I lived in a constant mix of overwhelming joy and quiet fear. I was so cautious that every time I felt a backache or got tired, I'd panic. So Nathan and I decided to keep the news to ourselves, not telling anyone until we made it through the first trimester. The most sensitive time. It wasn't easy, at all. There were days when I just wanted to shout to the world that we were going to have a little angel. But my instincts told me to be patient. Every morning, I placed my hand on my belly and whispered gentle greetings to the baby, like a promise that I would do everything to keep them safe. Nathan was different. He wasn't just a perfect husband. He was already the kind of father that made me proud. He never missed a single prenatal appointment, always being the first to grab my hand during ultrasounds, his eyes misty the first time he heard our baby's tiny heartbeat in the quiet room. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. We started dreaming about the future, about a nursery painted soft pink or blue, about reading bedtime stories, about walking them to their first day of school. Nathan assembled every piece of furniture for the nursery himself, working so carefully like he was building a tiny castle for our little prince or princess. Sometimes I would catch him just sitting there, staring at the wooden crib, pride shining in his eyes. Then, at 13 weeks, when the doctor confirmed that the pregnancy was healthy, we knew it was time to share our joy with our family. Nathan suggested a small party, nothing fancy or loud, just the people closest to us. We invited both sets of parents, siblings, and a few close friends. That afternoon, when everyone gathered at our house, they thought it was just another casual lunch. I wore a loose cream-colored dress, deliberately choosing something comfortable that gently showed my growing bump. When I walked out of the kitchen carrying a tray of desserts, all eyes turned toward me. I saw my mother, Elaine, gasp and cover her mouth before rushing over to hug me. She burst into happy tears, caressing my belly and whispering sweet words to her very first grandchild. My father, Robert, shook Nathan's hand firmly, his eyes filled with pride and emotion. The whole room erupted with cheers, hugs, and congratulations. I looked up at Nathan, who smiled at me with the warmest look I had ever seen. But that happiness lasted only a few short minutes. In the middle of all the laughter, I noticed someone's expression changing. Marlene, my mother-in-law, stood silently in a corner, her lips pressed tightly together, her eyes darkening. I hadn't even made it over to greet her when she turned away, her shoulders stiff, sending a clear message: I wasn't welcome. The others kept laughing and chatting, but near her the air grew colder by the second. Nathan noticed and quickly went to her side. "Mom, are you okay? I thought you'd be happy to hear the news," he asked gently. Marlene clutched her purse tightly, her mouth a hard line, frustration flashing in her eyes. "Happy? You're asking me if I'm happy, Nathan?" Her voice rose louder than necessary, making every other conversation stop. "You and your wife kept this from me and let me find out at the same time as everyone else, like an outsider?" The room froze. My face burned, and my hands gripped the fabric of my dress. My mother, Elaine, stepped up, trying to calm the situation. "Marlene, they just wanted to make sure everything was okay before sharing the good news." But Marlene wasn't hearing any of it. "Oh, of course. I'm sure your family deserved to know first, right? But not me," she spat, each word cutting through the air. Nathan's brow furrowed, his voice low and firm. "Mom, this was a decision Audrey and I made together. We just wanted to wait until it was safer." "Safer?" she scoffed. "Or maybe she just didn't want me involved from the beginning." She threw me a sharp look like a dagger. I knew from the start she never wanted me to be part of her child's life. Her harsh words fell heavily in the silent room. I bit my lower lip, feeling tears threaten to spill but refusing to let them. Nathan squeezed my hand, his own anger flashing in his eyes. "Mom, that's enough," Nathan said, his voice ice cold. "If you're going to ruin today, then you should leave." Marlene's face turned crimson with anger. She looked around the room searching for someone to back her up, but found only averted gazes and awkward silence. No one stood with her. "Fine," she snapped. "If you all want me out, then so be it." She spun around and stormed out, her heels striking the floor with heavy, angry thuds. Even after she left, a heavy tension hung in the air. I stood there, still clutching Nathan's hand, trying to steady myself under the worried gazes of my mother and our friends. But deep down, I knew the party was no longer what we had hoped for. That night, after everyone had gone, I curled up on the sofa while Nathan made me a cup of tea. The uncomfortable, swirling emotions refused to settle. Nathan set the tea on the table, sat beside me, and wrapped his arms around me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't think Mom would react like that." I leaned my head on his shoulder and whispered back, "I didn't want our happy day to turn into a nightmare." "I know," Nathan sighed heavily. "Marlene, she always has a way of making everything about her." I looked up at him. "Do you think she'll stop here?" Nathan fell silent, his expression thoughtful. "I'm not sure," he said at last. "But no matter what, I promise. I won't let anyone hurt you again." I nodded, wanting to believe him. But deep inside, a vague uneasiness was growing. I had a feeling this was only the beginning of the trouble Marlene would bring. And next time it might not just be harsh words. 3 days after the announcement party, as I was settling into bed with a cup of herbal tea, my phone buzzed. Marlene's name flashed across the screen. My heart tightened on instinct. I hesitated for a few seconds before opening the message, hoping it was just a late apology. But that hope quickly died. The message was so long I had to scroll 3 times to read it all. In it, Marlene blamed everything on me, calling me a selfish daughter-in-law, someone who doesn't appreciate family, and claiming I had zero respect for the woman who raised my husband. Her words were filled with anger and resentment. At the end, she suddenly made an offer. She wanted to throw me a proper baby shower as a way to make up for the misunderstanding. I set my phone down, my heart in turmoil. Nathan came out of the bathroom, drying his hair with a towel. Seeing my face, he asked, "What's wrong, babe?" I handed him the phone. Nathan read the message, his eyebrows drawing tighter with each line. When he reached the end, he let out a dry, incredulous laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was just so unbelievable. "What do you think?" Nathan asked, setting the phone down. I shook my head, feeling exhausted. "I'm not sure. Most of the message was just blaming me. It didn't feel like a real apology." Nathan sat next to me, his eyes softening. "I feel the same way. But if we refuse, it'll just give her more reasons to stir up trouble. Maybe if we give her this chance, she'll finally back off." I leaned against his shoulder, closing my eyes. "I'm just afraid," I hesitated, memories of Marlene's angry stare flashing back. "I'm afraid she'll turn the party into her own stage." Nathan gently squeezed my hand. "If you don't want it, I'll tell her no." I thought for a long time. Deep down, I knew Nathan was trying to keep the peace before the baby arrived. And part of me still hoped for some miracle. That maybe, this time, Marlene would really be kind. "All right," I whispered, "but under one condition." Nathan looked at me, waiting. "We have to be part of the planning. I don't want everything spinning out of control." Nathan nodded immediately. "I promise." The next morning, Nathan called Marlene. I sat next to him, listening to the conversation. Nathan politely thanked her for offering to throw the baby shower, but emphasized that he and I wanted to be involved in the planning. Marlene, at first hesitant, after a few seconds of silence, cheerfully agreed. "Of course, Nathan, I just want everything to be perfect for Audrey and the baby," she said loudly over the phone. I couldn't help but feel a strain in her voice, like she was covering something behind the sweetness. Right after the call, Marlene sent us a long email with a list of what she had planned for the party. I opened the email and could barely believe my eyes. Theme: Nathan's childhood memories, completely unrelated to me or the baby. Main colors: dark brown and deep gold, two colors I absolutely disliked. Guest list, filled with distant relatives I had never even met. I sat frozen for a few minutes, my hands trembling slightly with anger. Nathan glanced over and sighed. "I'll talk to her," he reassured me. "We'll fix everything." I tried to smile, but the uneasiness had already taken root in my heart. Somehow, I knew this wasn't going to be that simple. Marlene had her plan, and this time, she wasn't going to give up control easily. That morning, when Nathan drove me to the venue for the baby shower, I tried to calm myself down. I held his hand tightly, pushing away the lingering anxiety that had clung to me since receiving Marlene's endless email. But the moment I stepped inside, my heart sank to the floor. The entire room was drenched in dark brown and dull beige, creating a heavy, gloomy atmosphere that made me fight the urge to turn around and leave. Instead of the light, joyful feeling I had dreamed of for this special day, the place looked more like an old, lifeless exhibit. The worst part was yet to come. Right in the center of the hall, dominating everyone's view, was a huge banner plastered with childhood photos of Nathan. Silly, messy pictures, completely unrelated to the unborn baby. Beneath the words, "Welcoming the next generation of the Williams family," printed in giant letters, there was no mention of me, the mother carrying the child. I stood frozen for several seconds. It felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. Nathan squeezed my hand and whispered, "I'm so sorry, Audrey. I didn't know she would do this." People around us started murmuring. I saw my mother, Elaine, walk in behind me. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on the banner. Her face stiffened for a moment, then shifted into a fierce determination I had never seen in her before. Without hesitation, my mother strode toward the banner. Under the stunned gazes of everyone, she calmly unhooked each corner, folded it neatly, and carried it toward the nearest trash can. The room fell silent. Even the soft background music seemed to stop, leaving only the sound of her heels clicking sharply on the floor. Marlene, chatting with some friends in the corner, turned just in time to see my mother tossing the banner into the trash without a second thought. Her face went pale with shock, then quickly flushed red with anger. "Maggie!" she screamed, her voice echoing across the hall. "What do you think you're doing?" My mother turned around, standing tall. "I'm simply putting the focus back where it belongs," she said, her voice calm but razor sharp. "This party is to celebrate my grandchild and Audrey, not a nostalgic tribute to Nathan's childhood." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Some guests covered their mouths to hide their laughter. Others lowered their eyes awkwardly. Marlene, unwilling to back down, took a step forward and growled, "I spent weeks preparing all this. Who gave you the right to interfere?" My mother didn't flinch. "Being Audrey's mother gives me that right," she said, her gaze ice cold. "I won't let anyone, not even you, turn my daughter's special day into a ridiculous spectacle." I stood there stunned and grateful at once. I had never seen my mother so strong. She didn't shout, she didn't use cruel words. Just her presence and calm reasoning forced Marlene to step back. Nathan moved forward, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. He looked at his mother, his eyes firm. "Mom, this is Audrey's day. You need to respect her wishes." Marlene bit her lip, her eyes burning with anger. But under the watchful eyes of all the guests, she could do nothing except shoot me a cold, cutting glare before turning and storming off. I took a deep breath, feeling the heavy atmosphere finally begin to lift. A few close friends came over to congratulate me, gently steering the mood back to where it should have been, celebrating the joy of welcoming a new life. The party slowly regained a cheerful atmosphere after the tense confrontation, but I couldn't fully relax. That lingering cloud of unease never left, and soon, my worries came true. I noticed Marlene repeatedly refilling her champagne glass despite it being a baby shower, an event where alcohol really shouldn't have been present. At first it was just a few toasts with guests, but as time went on she grew louder, more boisterous, her face flushed and her voice rising above everyone else's. When it was almost time to cut the cake, Marlene suddenly stood up, clinking her spoon against a glass to grab everyone's attention. The room fell awkwardly silent, all eyes turning toward her. "Excuse me," Marlene slurred slightly, trying to sound formal. "I have a special announcement. Since I gave birth to Nathan, the wonderful father of this child, I think it's only right that I get to name my precious granddaughter." I froze, and Nathan's eyes widened in disbelief. Marlene went on, oblivious to the stunned silence. "I've chosen a name full of meaning. Eleanor, after Eleanor Williams, the great matriarch who built our family legacy," she declared proudly, her chin held high as if she had bestowed a priceless gift. The room was suffocating with tension. I took a deep breath, stepping forward, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Marlene," I said, "Nathan and I have decided to choose our baby's name ourselves. It's a decision for the parents to make." The room froze again. Marlene narrowed her eyes at me, her rage clearly visible on her flushed face. "You ungrateful girl," she screamed, her voice shaking the hall. "If it weren't for me giving birth to Nathan, you wouldn't even have this baby. Who do you think you are, to refuse me?" I stood frozen. Around us, guests shifted uncomfortably, whispering. Some avoided my gaze. Others looked at me with sympathy. My mother stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. Nathan tightened his grip on my hand, his face tense. But Marlene wasn't finished. She stumbled toward the gift table where all the beautiful presents from friends and family were neatly arranged. In front of everyone's horror, she yanked a gift straight out of my hands, a present a close friend had just given me, and hurled it onto the floor. "You don't deserve anything," she screamed, her voice shaking from both rage and alcohol. "You're just a shameless daughter-in-law who stole my son." I stood there, stunned, staring at the shattered gift on the ground, tears welling up in my eyes. The guests shifted uneasily and the air grew heavy. A few of my friends whispered about getting ready to leave. I heard the faint clicking of phone cameras from a corner. Some guests had started recording the chaos. Nathan stepped between me and his mother. "Mom, that's enough," he shouted, and for the first time I saw him truly furious. Marlene didn't listen. She kept pointing at me, spewing bitter accusations, saying I had stolen her son, that this baby was her property because she was the one who gave birth to Nathan. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I instinctively placed my hands over my belly, wanting to protect the little life growing inside me from the madness. My mother stepped forward, standing in front of me like a shield. "Enough, Marlene," she said firmly. "You're hurting your own son and grandchild." But her words only made Marlene even more hysterical. She flailed and screamed incoherently, sending the whole hall into chaos. I grabbed Nathan's hand, my voice trembling as I whispered, "I can't take this anymore." Nathan nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "We're leaving. Now." But before we could go, Marlene did something that pushed everything far beyond anything I had ever imagined. I shakily pulled my phone from my purse, my hands icy cold with tension. Amid the yelling and confusion, I calmly dialed 911, with a surprising steadiness. 911, emergency. What's your emergency?" The operator's voice sounded like a lifeline through a storm. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "I'm at Maple Grove Hall, 4827 Westbridge Road. Someone is causing a serious disturbance at my baby shower. I'm pregnant and I don't feel safe." The operator asked a few more questions to confirm the situation, then assured me that officers were on their way. I hung up, my entire body tense, my eyes locked on Marlene, who was still out of control. Marlene, now completely unhinged, continued to hurl insults at me in front of the crowd. She grabbed another gift from the table, ripped off the wrapping paper and threw it to the ground, like some twisted show of dominance. Everyone stood frozen, the room filled with stunned, horrified silence. Nathan stepped forward again, trying to stop her, but she shoved him back so forcefully he stumbled a step. "Mom, stop it!" he shouted, his voice breaking. Right then, 2 police officers arrived at the entrance. Their tall figures and blue uniforms sliced through the room like a knife. A female officer approached me, her eyes full of sympathy. "Ma'am, we received the call. Can you point out who's causing the disturbance?" I pointed at Marlene, who was now stumbling toward the cake table with a twisted expression. The male officer stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, we need you to calm down and leave the premises." Marlene spun around, her face full of hatred. "I'm not going anywhere," she screamed. "This is my grandchild's party. They're the ones who should leave." The female officer kept her voice gentle. "Ma'am, please cooperate. Otherwise, we'll have to take necessary action." "Don't touch me!" Marlene shrieked, flailing wildly and knocking a glass off the table, shattering it into glittering shards under the lights. The male officer moved quickly, blocking her before she could cause more damage. "You're resisting an officer. If you don't cooperate, we'll have to place you under arrest." "You have no right," Marlene screamed, struggling fiercely. Seconds later, to the shock of everyone in the room, Marlene was handcuffed and escorted outside. There was a mixture of murmuring, chairs scraping, and guests grabbing their coats as the tension suffocated the room. I stood frozen, clutching my belly, barely breathing. My mother wrapped her arms around my shoulders, holding me close in silent reassurance. Nathan broke away from the group of officers and came back to me, his face full of pain and anger. "I'm so sorry, Audrey. I can't believe it got this bad." I shook my head, my voice thick with emotion. "You don't need to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong." Outside, the wail of the police car siren echoed as Marlene, her face twisted with hatred, was shoved into the backseat of the patrol car. The atmosphere inside the hall shattered. Some guests politely said goodbye, others quietly slipped out, leaving behind broken pieces and suffocating silence. I looked around the emptying room, everything feeling so far from what I had once dreamed for today. Only Nathan, my mother, and a few close friends remained, trying to clean up the wreckage of a destroyed celebration. 2 days after the chaotic party, Nathan's phone started ringing nonstop. Relatives from his side of the family, those who hadn't attended, kept calling. Their voices all carried the same tone, outrage and blame. "I heard Nathan's mother arrested? At the party?" Aunt Patricia's voice snapped over the phone. "Wasn't there a better way, Audrey? She's still Nathan's mother." Another call from Uncle Henry wasn't any better. "Family is family. You can't just turn your back on blood over a heated moment." I sat beside Nathan, hearing every word through the speaker, my heart heavy with bitterness. It was clear Marlene had already twisted the story, painting herself as the poor victim to those who hadn't been there. Nathan tried to explain, but no one wanted to hear the full story. Some relatives even hinted that I had poisoned Nathan's mind, that if it weren't for me, their family would have never fallen apart. That night, after a silent dinner, Nathan sat brooding at the table, running his fingers through his dark brown hair. I quietly cleaned up, not wanting to add more pressure. But I couldn't bear the heavy silence any longer. "What are you thinking about?" I asked softly. Nathan looked up, his eyes tired. "I'm just wondering if there was another way. Maybe if I had stepped in earlier, you wouldn't have had to call the police." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Do you think I overreacted?" "No, Audrey." Nathan shook his head immediately, his voice earnest. "I'm just confused. I know you went through a lot." Sat down across from him, meeting his gaze. "If I hadn't done what I did, do you really think your mother would have stopped? Or would she have kept going, insulting me in front of everyone?" Nathan stayed silent. The images from that day still haunted me. Marlene yanking gifts out of my hands, shouting accusations, her furious eyes as the police took her away. I knew if I hadn't acted, things would have gotten much worse. As if confirming my thoughts, my phone rang. It was Alyssa, one of my close friends who had been there that day. I answered and her excited voice filled the line. "Audrey, I sent you some videos," Alyssa said. "We recorded everything your mother-in-law did. If you need, you can show Nathan, so he really understands what you faced." I thanked Alyssa and opened the videos. The footage was undeniable. Marlene arguing with guests, screaming, throwing gifts, resisting the police. Her shrieking echoed through the small screen, leaving a chilling impression even in replay. I set the phone down and pushed it toward Nathan. "You should watch this," I said. Nathan put on headphones and watched closely. I watched his face shift, from shock to confusion, then to pain and anger. When the video ended, he removed the headphones, his eyes heavy. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I wasn't there for you enough. I didn't realize my mom could act like that." I grabbed his hand and squeezed it gently. "Now you see why I had to do what I did?" Nathan nodded, his eyes filled with resolve. "I completely support you, Audrey. We're not letting anyone, not even my mother, hurt our family again." I smiled, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in days. Maybe things weren't over yet, but at least Nathan and I were on the same side now. And this time we would protect our little family with everything we had. The next morning, with soft sunlight filling the living room, Nathan and I sat together drinking coffee. We both knew it was time to make a decision we couldn't put off any longer. Nathan set down his mug and looked at me with firm determination. "I've been thinking all night," he said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "We need to set clear boundaries with Mom." I nodded, feeling a weight lift slightly from my chest. "I don't want our child growing up in chaos and toxicity," I said. "If we don't act now, it'll be even harder to escape later." Nathan took my hand and squeezed it. "We're cutting contact with Mom, at least until she recognizes the damage she's caused and gets professional help." I looked at him, surprised by the strength in his voice. "Are you sure?" I asked, still nervous. "Absolutely," Nathan said without hesitation. "I love her, but I won't let anyone, not even her, destroy our family." We quickly agreed on basic rules: no phone calls, no texts, no visits. If Marlene showed up uninvited, we would call the police immediately. No exceptions, no second chances. Nathan picked up his phone and composed a short but firm message to Marlene. He informed her that from now on she was not allowed to contact us or the baby until she took full responsibility for her actions and sought professional help. After hitting send, Nathan let out a deep sigh, as if lifting a massive weight off his chest. I wrapped my arms around him from behind, feeling his heart beating fast but steady. "We did the right thing," I whispered, reassuring both of us. About an hour later, Nathan's phone rang. It was Marlene. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then placed the phone face down on the table without answering. Text messages poured in right after, but Nathan didn't read them. He just looked at me, his eyes full of determination. "We've made our decision. I'm not going back on it," he said. That day, Nathan and I focused on small but meaningful tasks: assembling the crib, folding tiny newborn clothes, sticking cute wall decals in the nursery. Our laughter filled the house for the first time in weeks. Even though whispers from his side of the family continued, I didn't feel hurt like before. We knew that the peace of our little family was worth more than anything, and we were ready to fight to protect it. That night, as I read a book on newborn care, Nathan placed his hand on my belly. Our baby kicked gently, as if in agreement. "You feel that too, don't you?" Nathan smiled, his eyes glowing. "You know we'll always protect you." I smiled back, tears shimmering in my eyes, not from sadness, but from finally seeing a full, hopeful future ahead. A future free of control, accusations, and full of pure love and hope. In the following weeks, our life felt like a completely new chapter. No more pressure calls, no endless guilt-tripping texts. Our small home, once shadowed by fear, now overflowed with peace. Every morning, I woke up relieved, focusing only on the baby growing inside me and the quiet, steady love Nathan gave. We walked around the neighborhood together, prepared tiny details for the nursery, and made plans for the future with a joy that used to feel so far away. Our close friends who had witnessed everything kept supporting us. They visited, bringing little gifts, warm wishes, and often just sitting beside me, listening to my dreams for our little one. One afternoon, while I was making tea, Nathan called out from the living room, his voice full of surprise. I rushed over to find him staring at his phone. "Audrey," he said, wide-eyed, "one of the videos from the party. It's gone viral." I froze. "Viral? You mean?" Nathan nodded. "The clip of Mom's outburst, the police stepping in, it's gotten tens of thousands of views in just one day. And the comments, you have to see them." We sat together, reading through the comments. Most people stood firmly with me, expressing shock and outrage at Marlene's behavior. "I've never seen anyone act that horribly at a baby shower. This mother-in-law needs to learn how to respect her daughter-in-law if she wants a relationship with her grandchild. The mom-to-be handled it so gracefully. Total respect." I laughed and teared up at the same time. The deep wounds I thought no one could understand were now being met with overwhelming empathy from strangers. And the miracle was, I didn't feel judged. I felt seen. Nathan squeezed my hand. "See? Not just me. The world sees you did the right thing." I leaned my head against his shoulder, filled with gratitude. Not everyone is lucky enough to have a husband willing to stand with them, to let go of toxic ties for the sake of protecting a new family. A few days later, my mom and some close friends came over, bringing a giant cake that read, "Welcome Audrey and our little angel." the house filled with laughter and warmth. I had never felt so loved and supported. Sure, there were still occasional whispers and criticisms from the other side of the family or random online trolls, but they didn't hurt anymore. I had learned that choosing to protect my happiness and my child's safety was the best choice I could ever make. And then, on a golden afternoon, as Nathan and I were moving the crib closer to the window, preparing for the baby's arrival, I felt a tiny kick. Nathan placed his hand on my belly, his eyes lighting up like the first time he heard the heartbeat at the ultrasound. "We're ready," he whispered. I smiled, my heart at peace. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but with love, respect, and the strength we had built, I knew our little family would stand strong. Our story taught me a powerful lesson. Not everyone who carries the title family deserves a place in your life. We chose peace over clinging to toxic ties. We chose to protect the family we were building with all the love and determination we had. And today, in a home filled with laughter and hope, I know, sometimes, the bravest form of love is knowing when to walk away. What do you think about Nathan's and my decision in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel to explore more heartfelt family stories in our upcoming videos.